Well, hey there, Hidden Nation. Josh Carey here. It's so very good to see you. Question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed out are you? 12, like me? I thought so. Isn't it crazy in the world we live in? Stress is just sort of this thing that I feel so many of us have just come to say, okay, it's just part of our life, but does it have to be? And if so, how do we get it down a few notches? Well, our guest today is here to help us explore all of that because, as she says, she's been through it, which may feel like a lifetime, but since COVID has taken a better path, she helps her clients achieve this stress-free lifestyle. She calls herself a disentanglement mentor. I'm here to learn right alongside of you. Ariel Ziegler, so good to have you on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being accommodating in the time frame.
How exactly, because I want to help position this for myself as well, how do you help your clients achieve what they're going for? What is the road to victory here?
So traditional mental health modalities, an individual is very stressed out, right? They have their entire week planned out. They come in one time a week, maybe one time every other week, depending on what their insurance provides. And they come in and they unload upon their therapist and they feel really good for a few hours. And then the next day or something happens and they're back in this chronic, like hypervigilant state of like stressed out, freaked out, can't see freaking in front of their eyes. 5 million things are going on. So the way that my practice is different, and my vision is to change the entire mental health industry. I started working with an addiction detox facility using my modalities last year. So foot in the door, is I address the gut microbiome and the nervous system because the average individual is walking around in a higher brainwave state, what we call high beta brainwave. It's about 40 hertz. And you cannot create neuroplasticity when you are in that brainwave state, like because your perception is narrowed, your prefrontal cortex is narrowed, your cortisol and your adrenaline are very high in the bloodstream. You are literally just trying to survive. It's fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And actually, we found out recently, collapse is also a modality. Yeah, you literally collapse is part of that fight, flight mechanism. And if someone is in that state, you cannot create new patterns of behavior. You cannot change what your current default is. You can unload what's going on, but you cannot move past what is going on. So the way that my business is different is that I have all my clients, I address their gut microbiome. My first master's degree was in nutrition. We heal the gut microbiome. So the microbiota are functioning optimally. 85 to 90% of your neurotransmitters are in your gut. So your serotonin, your dopamine, your GABA, your melatonin, all that is modulated here. And this is why long-term behavior change is very difficult for people in traditional therapeutic modalities. And it takes years. Most of my clients come to me 3 to 9 months tops. We've entirely changed their life. Had $100,000 payoff. One of my clients had paid off $100,000 in 6 months, 3 months. Another client lost 50 pounds in 2 months because he's just not eating like an asshole, which was his default mechanism to cope and deal with emotions. Had other clients, have 5, 10 clients where before they couldn't even get out of their own way because of self-sabotage, because of childhood issues. So if you stabilize the gut microbiome, bring down that cortisol adrenaline response within the bloodstream, you change the brainwave state and come into theta or alpha even, and that is where neuroplasticity can start to occur. Theta is where our subconscious behaviors are. Alpha is more of that like calm, steady, focused, conversational. And so when we address those mechanisms, which I do through my website, the gut microbiome, breathwork practices to deal with emotional repression, then we can, in our calls, actually address what's going on. And we dive into the subconscious defaults because a lot of people are like, oh, I just do things this way. No, we don't do anything anyway without some sort of previous programming. And that could come from wounding. It could come from core memories. It could come from your values and your belief sets. So we address the values and belief sets of the subconscious and align that with the conscious, as well as stabilizing everything else.
So when we work together, how does this look? Is it, like I heard you say, breath work? Is this dialogue? How do we address the microbiomes? Is this also a mindset shift? Is it eating habits? Is it all of it? So what steps do we take with you?
It's all of it. So say someone comes onto an assessment call. First off, I don't take everyone. I've turned away people because you have to be in that moment of change. You have to be willing to invest the time, energy, and effort. On average, my clients have to do 15 to 30 minutes worth of work a day. And then we have a 1 hour call per week, right? So we're talking maybe hour and a half, 2 hours tops half an hour over the course of the week, and then an hour on top of that. If I accept them, if I feel that they are in a good place to move forward, right? And they are really committed, because I will never take someone's money if I don't feel they're going to follow through, right? Then we have one call per week. They have a constant dialogue with me for 90 days to start. So if they get caught on certain issues, if we dive into certain subconscious traumas or core memories they're stuck on, they're going through an anxiety attack, certain things that we have created and custom curated for them aren't working, they reach out to me. So they have constant feedback and support for me through those 90 days. I also have a community that they can feel like they're not alone, because as we're going through these traumatic experiences, so many of us feel very, very alone with what's going on. Like, I'm the only person that's going through this. And then I address their gut microbiome. So we start out an assessment. I see what they're eating, what's creating that inflammatory state on top of their perception, which is creating inflammation, right? Because our perception towards something creates, if it stresses us out, if it's making us have that upregulation, that's a cortisol and adrenaline response. What does that do? That shifts your entire body to an acidic state and inflames to the point where it kills off the gut microbiota. So I address the gut by healing it through certain food combinations, prebiotic and macro and micronutrient combinations, through a website I set them up on. And then breath work and movement protocols are also through my website as well. So they have a 90-day plan that's through the website, and then one-on-one calls.
What is the biggest obstacle you see people making before they even come to you that maybe we can self-assess, something we could reduce, minimize, or start doing? What is a low-hanging fruit to get us on the path in the right direction?
One of the biggest ones, and the easiest to recognize, is any sort of trigger responses, right? What is causing like, if you know something is making you angry, frustrated, fearful, whatever it is, breathe. Number one, breathe, right? Because the knee-jerk impulsive reaction is to freak out, avoid, or scream, whatever it is. It's that fight, freeze, right? Breathe. Because what that is that's putting you into hypervigilance. And that is our default mechanism to survive. Your brain is like, fuck, this is going to hurt me. It's going to kill me, whatever the story is, right? So if we just take that instant moment to roll the shoulder blades back and breathe, this is actually the foundation of everything I do, and assess what's really going on, you are actually creating a little blip within that neural pathway, because it's electrical conductivity that's been programmed to help you survive because of whatever shit you've been pushing underneath the rug. So if you start to just breathe and lean back, you're going into that parasympathetic tone and starting to break down the mechanism that is creating that reactivity and the impulsive reaction that is not helping you.
I appreciate that instruction, because so much of what I love the trigger idea, right? Because we get triggered throughout the day and we don't take time to be self-aware and acknowledge what's happening. Is it correct for me? I've learned to think that when I'm triggered, it's my ego getting in the way and it's not helping or serving. So I try to reframe. Is that a good adjustment?
So reframing has its time and place. It really goes to the what is going on, because an ego has so many different definitions. Ego is anything that is not you,
Mhm.
right? And what is you? The conscious observer, right? The thing that is observing. So there's multiple egos, identities, constructs, personas, however you want to verbiage it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because ego typically is created as a survival mechanism for your avatar or your persona to be able to deal with whatever stress happened in the past. So we don't want to have an abrasive reaction to it, because it came about as a means to survive. So reframing can be very beneficial, but the question is, are you repressing your emotions during that process? Because if you're repressing your emotions, then what are emotions? They are hertz. They vibrate at a frequency. What are the rules of physics within this 3D reality? Energy cannot be negated. It must be transferred. So if you're dealing with something at that moment and you can't, process the emotions, yes. Okay, reframe, come back to it later. But if it's just an avoidance or a bypassing, you still need to come back and deal with it at a later date. Otherwise, it is still within your body. And believe it or not, that is any energy that is still stuck within you and not moving through fluidly. typically this is where gastrointestinal and autoimmune conditions arise over a long duration of time, is because people just have a bunch of emotional repression. And that is oxidative damage to the body. If we're not dealing with our emotions, which is free form energy, that is oxidative or free radical damage to the body. All genetic mutations that occur, well, actually, there's a book for your readers, Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. He's a cellular biologist gone quantum physicist. And 70% of our genetic expression is dictated by the environment that we live in. So our perception dictates whether genetic mutations turn on or off. So if someone is stressed because of what they perceive and they see that emotion and they push it down and they're not dealing with it, it's still within their body, which is a part of my process. We break that down and move through it.
Does current lifestyle play a big part of this?
100%.
Yes,
100%.
especially like we're attached to our phones and
Oh,
social
God.
media. How does this play?
So, I mean, right now, I told you when I jumped on this, I'm on a 2 days into my water fast, right? I'm doing first time I've done it for the public. I'm doing a unfuck your system challenge, right? So we're dealing with the nervous system and the gut microbiome. Our dopamine centers are within the gut, right? So our motivation, our drive, our ability to accomplish, all that is within the gut. And these little fucking things, I love them, but I hate them.
You're
These
talking
are
about the phone for
yes,
those.
I am. Yes, I am. Yes, yes, yes. The thing that I am on right now. These create dopamine dependence, and they are very easy marker. They are very easy like grab for our brain to get that dopamine hit. Normally, we get dopamine endogenously. Endogenously means within the body, as opposed to exogenously. This is exogenous. We become dependent upon this because it is such a low hanging fruit for dopamine, creating that addiction cycle. Otherwise, we have to exercise, we have to eat right, we have to have goals and accomplish that goal, because dopamine is actually not a neurotransmitter of feeling good. It's almost like a shot. It's like you hit this marker, right? Like we have a 100K month, right? And you're like, okay, if I hit that 100K month, then I'm going to reward myself. And then we feel it, you feel amazing, right? But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get there. These things, you get dopamine. Play with it. Dopamine, dopamine. So of course, the brain, monkey brain always wants to go for the easiest thing. The body always wants to maintain homeostasis. So what's it going to do? It's going to do the thing that's easiest, the shortest path from A to B. It wants dopamine. It's going to go for the phone, not the 100K month. And we wonder why we're distracted all the times.
How in the world do you help your clients or help the listener or help me? How do we get that in better control towards the right path?
By addressing the gut microbiome and the nervous system, right? Because that dependence has come from the fact that your dopamine centers are dysregulated. And I promise you, those people who are addicted to certain things, their gut microbiota is not functioning optimally. But then there's also the learning of sitting in the uncomfortableness, right? Because what happens when we're addicted to dopamine and we have that pain pleasure, because think of it like a teeter-totter, right? So you have the pain on one side and you have the pleasure on the other. The more that we hit the little marker for the pleasure, the higher and higher the marker to get that same response for the pleasure goes up, right? It's like it's any chemical addiction, like alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, you need more to get the same high. The problem is that also creates a higher refractory or pain response for not indulging in the behavior. So it's a very uncomfortable stimulus for the individual to go without the impulsive dopamine hit. And this is why a lot of addicts in actual drugs, social media, whatever, they have like this withdrawal feeling, and they need a lot just to be able to maintain homeostasis or normal, which goes to, for most, complete abstinence for at least 30 days, and then addressing the stress response and healing the gut microbiome in that place. And then your body actually consumes itself if you're doing it right. It consumes the entire gut biome and you get a whole new layer, which helps with that dopamine dependence, and your body starts to exogenously create it again.
Do you find that most anyone is really capable of achieving this long term?
100%. I've seen it time and time again. I've worked with over 2,000 people, about 2,000 people total, 2,500 total over my entire career. I've been coaching and mentoring for 14 years. Over the last 4 years, at least 700 people. And I mean, I'm a walking byproduct. I was an anxious, panic attacked wreck. I was hospitalized multiple times. I I had massive addictions. I was admitted to a treatment facility not once but twice. Anyone can do it. It's just how willing are you to be able to get uncomfortable? How committed are you, and how willing are you to be able to sit in that uncomfortable nature? Because it doesn't feel good, not at all.
Yeah, that's the key, right?
Mhm.
Being comfortable with the uncomfortable. You
Yep.
started talking about your story a little bit. You, in fact, something fascinating. I think any near death experience, I'm intrigued by. You didn't have one or two, you had eight. What in the
Mhm.
world does that look like? What does that mean?
So, gosh, I was born into poverty, which is I've been homeless. I have witnessed two of my friends die in front of me. Half my family died in my early 20s, including my mother. And during all that, I went through when one of my friends died. I saw his mother shot in front of me, and the other guy also made a shot towards me. I've been in 5 car accidents. The most recent of which I actually don't know if my heart actually stopped or not, but I remember going somewhere and coming back, and then right after that, I got bitten by a rattlesnake 1 month later. So, um, yeah, it's just I've had a very chaotic life. Um, but it's amazing because as soon as I stopped identifying with the wounding and the victim mindset, it's almost like my entire life shifted on a 180 axis. As soon as I started taking responsibility, like we talked in 2020, when I reached that moment of choice of like either we're ending it or we're facing it, and everything started to change.
You seem like someone who could appreciate this because I've come to accept this truth for myself that we attract in our world what we create
Yep,
for ourselves,
yep,
by our thoughts, by our intention, by our being. You, for the majority that you just painted very broadly, yet specifically, you created this chaos, as you said. Do you feel that you, for whatever reason, brought that about?
100%. I believe that every single portion of our journey lends to our journey and our ability to lead others in a deeper way if we decide to not attach to the outcome, right? Because every single experience um, comes to us neutrally. It's our mind, it's our ego, it's our viewpoint towards life that we project upon the experience that dictates the right or wrong, the unhappiness or the happiness, whatever it may be. Because every experience in life is neutral. Every experience. It's the mind that creates the story around it, and the story that we identify with that creates the chaos or the unhappiness or whatever it may be. For my last experience, when I was in the most recent near death, when I was sitting in the ICU bed for 3 days with the rattlesnake, everybody was freaking the fuck out, and I was laughing. Like, I swear to God, I was like, this is hilarious. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just learned to be appreciative for everything that I was learning. Oh my God, like, look at what I can do with only half of my body functioning, right? And look at what I'm given. And I've just been taking it for granted. Like, and every single thing is given to us to show us what we're not allowing ourselves to see before if we disengage from it having to be some way. Trauma and suffering comes from only seeing one side of the coin. As soon as you allow yourself to see the full totality of the experience, life opens up.
Hmm. So the idea of how we interpret any scenario is the name of the game. You used the victim mentality idea before, and
Mhm.
I can relate to that as well. That up until several years ago, I didn't even realize that playing the victim was a thing and was the thing that was kind of getting in my way. You also believe strongly in the Stoic philosophy of the obstacle is the way. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, and that is the best, most well utilized verbiage that I think most people can identify with.
That's
I
right.
I like face the fear and do it anyway. Just run towards it. The faster you run towards it, the faster you're proving to your mind and to your body, right? The thing is with the spiritual community that I have an issue with is like they're all up here. It's like, okay, I'm a conscious observer. I can create my reality. Awesome. Cool. We need to come back down here. What does that mean? That means we create actions within this reality to start showing your body that you are inhabiting that it is okay. The only way we can build trust and we can start to create new neuroplasticity is by doing those actions. So it's moving towards those things that are terrifying you. By doing that, you're giving your somatic body, it's okay. This isn't going to hurt me. It's okay.
Why do you think we resist uncomfortability so much?
It's an evolutionary thing. This is survival. Uncomfortable equates to danger, stress, whatever it may be. We're lazy hedonistic creatures when we get down to it, right? But the only way that we are actually able to grow is by stress. The only way that we're able to expand is by stress. Obviously, being chronically traumatized and having 5 million things going on, I mean, that goes to the theory of like what creates trauma for one person versus another, which is another conversation for another time. But the body always wants homeostasis. It doesn't want to push hard on one side or the other. It wants to calibrate, which is like I said with the dopamine. It's always going to go for the lowest hanging fruit unless we cognitively push against those limits, right? We decide to take the harder path, which goes to being the conscious observer as opposed to just defaulting into what our behaviors are to make a life easy. And then something that I've also seen very common for individuals who've gone through very traumatic experiences, and you might have addressed this with entrepreneurs, is like once they've healed through all the trauma, they're like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And the brain cognitively is like, fuck this. I'm not going to go push myself to be excellent because at least I'm surviving now. And I find that's one of the biggest things for my mentorships too, is like logically, it makes no sense. When you have someone who's been through a traumatizing young adulthood, whatever it may be, you've maintained homeostasis. You're like, okay, I got decent income, blah, blah, blah. For me to go out and actually become the best version of myself, that's counter to evolution, because guess what? Now your neck is going to be stuck out. You are above the pack and you're more visible. For someone who's coming from trauma and wounding, that's typically the biggest gap right there, is like, it's terrifying, but it's deciding to sit in the uncomfortability because it's counter to evolution to be outside the pack, to be the leader of the pack.
Ariel, wrap this up for us in a nice bow for the listener. What is the overarching message they can take with them throughout the day now?
You are not a victim of circumstance, but the master of your own destiny if you decide to face the fear and do it anyway.
Well, there you go. I framed this conversation, how to live a stressor-free life, and boy, did you go deep. Thank you, Ariel, for sharing yourself, your story, your insight with us. Ariel Ziegler, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you, Mr. Josh.